That's what you have is a passion. But what you need in order for it to get done is discipline.
Correct. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely correct.
You have talent, and you will not recover from talent. You need skill. So I fashioned that to, like, in business, you have policy and then you have practice. When things fall apart in the workplace, how do you recover? Because you have a policy in place.
Connected Conversations with Lena Petrova. Bridging worlds, one conversation at a time.
Hello, and we are back to Connected Conversations with Lena Petrova. Today we are going to be talking about communication with Jackson Caesar.
Thank you.
Communication is incredibly important today because there is absolutely nothing that you can do if you are not efficient in communication, correct?
Absolutely.
No matter where you walk, no matter what you do, and apparently AI can do so many things for us, but it cannot communicate for you
Effectively. You got it.
So I was looking for the numbers, and are you familiar with the theory 55-38-7?
No.
So apparently in 1960s, Albert Mehrabian, University of California, came up with the theory. So
Okay.
what they are saying is whenever you deliver in the message, because when we are preparing for the presentation, we are always so concerned, what is the content, what is the information, but people do not really understand that it doesn't really matter what they're saying, doesn't really matter how content looks like. What really matters is how you are delivering it, right?
Yes.
And that's where this whole theory comes. They're saying that 55% nonverbal, 38% vocal, and only 7% words.
I can agree with that. I can totally agree with that theory.
And so they are saying, like, now, there are several other theories that came after 1960s. Now, some people are saying that it's 93-7, so 7% words, 93% is verbal, spatial, vocal. But the truth of the matter, only 10% information. The rest is all how you're saying it. And then the reason why I think what you do is incredibly important. So tell us who you are, where you come from, and what's your story.
All right. Thank you for having me here. My name is Jackson Caesar. I'm originally from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. I've been in the Washington, D.C. area for about 21 years. And since I've been here, my career continued to change. And now I'm happy to say that I'm living my dreams as a vocal performer and entertainer. I'm a ballroom singer, just to clarify. I get hired to sing at a lot of private engagements around town. I work from home also, teaching 4 subjects, teaching voice lessons, piano, Spanish, and public speaking. So you can see that there's a little overlap in those studies because you're like, okay, so singing, you have to work on pitches and expression. Spanish, you're learning a new language, pitch and expression. And then also piano, expression. Okay, everything is, there's an overlap with all of that. Speaking, giving presentations and all. So yeah, I enjoy it. And so thanks for having me.
It's incredible, absolutely incredible. And what I was thinking is that there are so many people who are saying, one day I'm going to write a book.
Yes.
One day I'm going to write a book. And some people say, well, maybe I don't have enough of a message. Maybe I don't have enough of the value to deliver to the public. You did write a book.
Absolutely.
So
Yes.
How did you come up to the final point of picking yourself together, getting inspired, and writing the book from the beginning to the end?
Yes. Surprisingly, it only took me 1 year. It was my students who encouraged me to do so. Because every time my students would come to the house, because I was teaching from home, I would give them some assignments or in a folder. And I'd be like, okay, so this is what we're going to work on today. Last week we went over the following. And they're like, you give us a lot of information. You should write a book. And after hearing that so often, I was like, that maybe they're right, because I'm using my own methods. So I was like, you know what? I'm onto something here. So I took it upon myself to do that. And I dedicated every Friday. I said, I have to dedicate one day. And I started with, because, you ask other authors and they go, oh, every day, put aside some time. That didn't work. So what worked for me was to dedicate one day of the week. And I started with from 3 to 7. So from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m., I will spend this time and I will only work on the book. And I got rid of all my distractions. And then it went from one day of the week to 2 or 3 days a week. And then before I knew it, it was every day of the week. And before I knew it, it was finished within 1 year. Now that was in 2017. The book didn't come out until last year because of other projects that I was working on. But yeah, so basically I was finished with the book in 1 year. I did my own editing, and then I had to hire an editor because you think you got it all, I figured it out. But then I hired an editor and they helped me out with getting the real points across and stuff. So yeah, that's how it started. My students, they're the ones who inspired me to do it. And I was like, you know what? They're right. So now I can refer them to my book.
Oh, you are very inspirational. When I was chatting with you, because I was always saying one day I'm going to write a book.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm not there yet, but I started the podcast.
Yeah,
and I'm going to say that you were one of the people who truly inspired me to do it.
Oh, thank you. Well, my pleasure.
Well, I did take some classes from you.
Yes.
To all our listeners, I highly recommend.
Thank you.
Highly recommend. So let's talk about your book. First of all, where can we find it?
So the book is available via Amazon, Apple Books. It's actually available just about everywhere because I paid for it. I paid for that. I saw that it was in Barnes & Noble. It was also with Walmart. Yeah, I saw that. And of course, Amazon. You can get the digital copy as well. And of course, a hard copy. So it's available pretty much everywhere now. Yeah.
And what I was thinking, because I saw your book, I read it.
Mm-hmm.
The concept I thought was incredibly interesting because what you're doing is you're taking the concept of interpretation, which for many of us, I'm a language professional, and I'm so used to using the concept of interpretation and apply it to languages and apply it to communication in a way. But you are taking it and you're connecting music.
Yes.
You're connecting singing.
Yes.
You're connecting communication.
Yes.
And you're also thinking of it as from the universal standpoint.
Absolutely.
Could you please stop?
Oh, my pleasure. So you've heard people say that the universal language is music. Music is the universal language. I tend to disagree with that. I understand what they mean by that. But I feel that the universal language, and I'll explain, is actually an expression. Because if I were to go to China, I can survive for 1 year without ever learning that language. How? I would use my expressions. Now there's verbal expression and then there's physical expressions here. So if they give me something to eat, I would either make a sound and go, I didn't speak that language, but it communicated that he liked it, or I go, that communicated. That's an expression. Or I can just make the look. You see, even babies, when they come into this world, they don't know how to speak the language, right? They have to learn it because of the environment that they're in. So they are sitting there using all their 5 senses. They're watching you, how you shape your mouth and everything. This is why it's important when we're speaking to our children. We say happy, we exaggerate a little bit because we want them to start, and they're looking and they're like, and that's how they're learning because they're looking at your expressions. That's the universal language. An expression. If I need directions, I don't speak the language. I'm going to be like, It's going to give you an idea so that you can understand what I'm trying to communicate. See, the expressions can be physical body, it can be facial, it can be sounds, pitches. So that's the universal language. And so when you're giving a presentation, it's how you say it, because if you're going to go like, or like, you see those tones, those pitches change everything. Or even my face, like. Even if you were to say your name, I always say this to my students, take your eyebrows and squinch them like this, like you're mad. And then say, my name is Jackson. And they go, my name is Jackson. And I go, now lift them up like this and say, my name is Jackson. You see how the pitch changed automatically? Your expression is the universal language. That's what people can understand. That's what's going to draw people.
Yeah, I was taking a class for you, and you were explaining to me how you can deliver the same message, and nobody's going to be paying attention to you. And then you just change your vocals, and then all of a sudden,
Yes.
people will immediately
Yes.
want to. Can you show our listeners
Sure,
how
absolutely.
it's so easy to just change your tone of the voice, and
Sure.
then all of a sudden the message will
Absolutely.
hit the point.
So I have an acronym of 7 different expressions. It's called the WIDE PAD. And so out of those 7, that's where I'm pulling them from. So let's start with diction as one of them. Okay, so that's the D, diction, and also let's use the other D, dynamics. Dynamics deals with the pitch and the volume. So if I'm going to get bigger or smaller in volume, diction is just basically saying that I'm going to be very clear, very clearly understood. I'm going to, enunciate. So I'm going to take a phrase, I love you. Just take the phrase, I love you. It's a common phrase, right? So I'm just going to say it 3 times. And each time that I say it, I need to use an expression so that you can get, because one of the secrets is if you're going to do a repeat, you got to change up something. So I'm going to say it 3 times. I love you. I love you. I love you. That did nothing because it's all the same. Now watch what happens when I add an interpretation or an expression. I love you. I love you. I love you. It changes everything. All because I used all of this. And all of a sudden it went from I love you, I love you, I love you to I love you, I love you, I love you. All of that goes together. This is what people can understand. Now let's add a dynamic to it. I love you. I love you. I love you. It changes everything. You're going to reach people when you do that. So someone will be in the audience, you're giving a presentation or you're singing. Someone will be in the audience, and you know how some people are just like, the lint in my clothes is more important than this presentation, and I'm just not here. I'm not here. This is what you're going to get them to do when you do that. You see? So it goes from this dull presentation, I'm not paying attention to, oh, he did something. That one little thing can make people do this in the audience. You've seen it. Someone is talking, and then all of a sudden because it's communicating.
Exactly. And how many of us had to sit through tons of boring presentations? So if you were to give us guidance, or at least one technique to implement into our presentations, what would you recommend?
That's a good question. Someone did ask me that a while back. They said, out of all of the 7 interpretations, which one probably supersedes them all? And I said, I never really thought about it. But now that I'm thinking about it, I'd have to say diction, because you want to make sure that you're being clearly understood. So I would say that's going to be probably the highest one there that I would stress and make sure that people can be clearly understood. Now, your mother would say to you, you're 3 years old, sit down, and you keep dancing. And then she changes it. Here's the secret. Anytime you have a repeated word, phrase, a melody line, or a note, and this is involving singing as well as speaking, you must do something different. Okay, so sit down. You keep dancing. I said sit down. Did you notice the second time was different? Because naturally what we do, and all I'm doing is showing you how you can utilize these as a skill set, because we do it naturally. That's why I call it a practical guide, because we're naturally doing this stuff. If we have to repeat ourselves, we are using more diction because we want to make sure that it's clearly understood. Sit down. Now there's a schwa. You familiar with a schwa?
No.
It's a vowel sound. And it really should have been the 6th vowel. I know they use Y as a 6th vowel, but it should have been the 6th vowel. It's an upside down E. It looks like an upside down E. And it sounds like right?
Yeah.
And so what I use with the schwa is I use it as another syllable for diction. So mom says, sit down. And you keep dancing. She goes, sit down. You hear that down?
Yeah.
There was another syllable there. You use the schwa. That's another way of using diction. Sit down. And then all of a sudden, now they understand. You have made yourself clear. So I think if there should be something to take home, diction would be one of the biggest things I would stress to take home. Diction.
Okay. And now let's go back to music.
Okay.
And so, how do you believe music and singing can enhance communication?
Because I can't let this go. Expressions. So why don't I give an example? Let's just use the same phrase, I love you. So you have, I love you, I love you, I love you. Remember the first rule? Anytime you have a repeated word, phrase, a melody, or a note, you must do something different. Now let's add a different expression, because this is how you're going to communicate to the audience, to the person that you're speaking to or singing to. So you go from, let's go with dynamics to start soft and get louder. I love you. I love you. I love you. Just that little bit changes, and all of a sudden you got them to go. And let's do the other way. I love you. I love you. I love you.
And that's how you connect music, singing, and you also teach Spanish.
Spanish, absolutely. Everything is connected. Yeah, because we're talking about communication. Ultimately, what we're talking about is effective communication. And all I'm doing is taking what we do naturally and turning into a skill set. Because skill involves a technique that you have to practice. So once you practice this and you get it and you're like, oh, okay, so now it's a skill set, and now you're able to you can reach anyone with that. There is another important, well, they're all important, all 7 of them. But as far as speaking and public speaking, the very first thing that I bring to my students' attention is the phrasing and punctuation. That's a whole class all by itself, because you have to have that, you got to put it into practice, you got to break that down. So in brief, we were taught in English grammar to look for the punctuation marks, the commas, semicolons, colons, question marks. Sometimes you'll have a sentence or a paragraph that does not have that. And so what they teach you in grammar in school when you're reading, to look for the commas or punctuation marks, take a deep breath and then continue reading, or pause and continue reading. So I said, but sometimes you have a sentence that doesn't have that opportunity. So then what do you do to be an effective speaker or singer? Because they teach the same thing in singing. You always take a breath when you see the comma or the punctuation mark. I've seen some music that does not have that in the lyrics. So then what do? You look for, before there were punctuation marks, there were punctuation words. So what are those words? They're conjunctions, they're prepositions, they're interrogatives. So you look for those to take a deep breath, or to pause, or to inflect when you come back in. And inflection is changing the pitch. So for example, a conjunction would be and, the word and. So you say, the dog, the cat, and, you see, I changed it. I didn't go the dog, the cat, and the cow. I said the dog, the cat, and the cow. That little bit of inflection changed everything. And it makes someone in the audience go, It's amazing how that works. It's the little things, but yet we do this naturally. And all I'm saying is that now whenever you read something, I can give you anything. And based on those skills of being able to look for punctuation words, you can read anything and be a pro.
It's absolutely incredible, because again, I did take that class from you, and I just realized how you can read the same paragraph, and then you read the same paragraph and put in, like slow down, put the tone of the voice up and down, and the same paragraph is just going to sound completely different, and
Yes.
you can paint with your voice in a
Yes.
way.
So here's one example of using the punctuation words. I'm going to use the song, the national anthem. Okay. The last line here, or the land of the free and the home of the brave. All right. There were no commas or punctuation marks in that line. So, but you have punctuation words. Oh, another good thing about the punctuation words is that it helps with good breathing too. Good phrasing and breathing. So I don't teach breathing, I teach punctuation, because once you use the punctuation, you're going to automatically breathe where you're supposed to. So we have, oh, the land of the free and the home of the brave. So if you were singing, you say, or the land of the free. That's a long note, right? What's coming after that? What word is next? And it's a conjunction. You can take a breath there. Or the land of the free and the home. Here's a preposition. Take a breath there. And now you're ending it because here's an article. The brave. Brave. So if you're speaking it, or the land of the free and the home of the brave, you can say, or the land of the free and the home of the brave.
It's incredible. I swear to God, I can be listening to you for hours, which brings me to the story I really want to our listeners to hear too.
Okay.
Because one of the reasons why we couldn't invite you to our podcast earlier, because you were traveling.
Yes.
And you were in Boston, and you became a part of the history.
Yes.
Of the history.
It's exciting.
So it's very exciting. Can you share that with us?
Yes. When I was an undergrad, I studied music. Okay. And one of my good friends, he's a musician friend of mine, he said, oh, since you're studying music, you should learn the music of Roland Hayes. I didn't know who he was. So he sent me the music, the songbook. There's a collection of spirituals by Roland Hayes. And I brought it to my teacher. I said, okay, so someone sent me this book. So can we learn some songs out of here? She says, oh, yes, you need to learn about this. You need to learn about this man. So she presented a couple of songs out of the book, and I started reading through the book, and he had a lot of things in there that just broke down why he arranged it this way. And then it also gave some background historic information about the spirituals that I didn't know. And I was just like, I want to know more about these spirituals. And he just taught me, part of my history, part of American history, part of the music history. And I was just like, oh my God, this is so deep. So then I started doing some Google searches and stuff. And I was just like, wait a minute, this man has amazing accomplishments and no one is talking about him. For example, he's the first African American to sing with a major orchestra, the Boston Symphony Orchestra. No one had done it before him. And this man was making at least $100,000. He was one of the highest paid entertainers in the world at one point. And I'm like, wait a minute, as a Black man, how do we not know this? This man was singing for kings and queens in Europe. And I'm just like, wait, how did we not know this? This man was traveling throughout the United States back and forth. He lived in Europe for 12 years. He was a linguist. He sings in like 4 or 5 languages. And I'm just like, okay, wait a minute. So I decided to make him my project. So I did it in 3 parts because that's all I could afford. I wanted to do it myself because I felt I didn't want to go get a grant or anything like that. I said, no, I want to do this myself. So I decided to put it into 3 parts. The first disc is the concert experience, and I'm performing 20 of the 30 spirituals. The second disc, I'm actually portraying him as he tells his story. He has a book out. Someone interviewed him. It's called Angel Mo, where he gives a lot more information. So throughout that book and the songbook, I gathered all that information, put it together so that he can tell his story. And then the third disc, I'm actually portraying him as he talks about the spirituals. And then I'm giving my testimony and experience about how I came into this. It wasn't easy because I didn't want to be exact for him because he was a very soft-spoken man. To hear him speak, there are some recordings of him speaking. It's kind of boring. So, you know, as an actor, you want to, you know, dramatize it. And so that's what I did. I gave my interpretation, you know, because I felt like, you know, what he's saying is too powerful to be like, you know, I was born 24 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. My mother was a former slave. I didn't want to do it that way. I was like, no, I was born 24 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. My mother was a former slave. You know, that really pulls people in. You know, I didn't want to be like, you know, like him. And I remember when his daughter, because she's 91 years old now, she's still around. She's still doing music. Her name is Africa Hayes. She said to me, she goes, well, you know, my father was a soft-spoken man. I said, yes, I'm aware of that, but I had to amplify it to kind of, you know, pull people in, with all due respect. So anyways, she, on that note with her, there's a school in Brookline, Massachusetts. It was called the Hayes School. And the principal is doing new things and great things with the students at the school. And he did some background checks, and they discovered that the name of the school was called Heath, and the Heath family actually had slaves. This principal is really big about inclusivity, and that's just not gonna match with, you know, keeping people involved and getting, you know, getting rid of the barriers of discrimination, segregation, racism. No. So they came up with this idea to change the name, and they got the students involved. They had 4 candidates in mind, and Roland Hayes won through a vote. And then they went before town hall, and they even allowed the kids to give a presentation. And so history is that it's Roland Hayes School now. So when they wanted to celebrate this name change of the school, because it was just last year in July when they went before town hall. And so here we are now, it's a name change. So just within a year. And they decided to celebrate on his birth date on June 3rd. So I got a phone call. We want you to come out and perform some of the music that you have out on Roland Hayes. And guess who made that recommendation? His daughter. So that's how I was able to go out there. And it was a wonderful experience. Even the children got together and they sang Go Down Moses as, you know, choir. And then I got them involved to sing with me. And it was a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. So I'm really honored and privileged to have had that opportunity to dig deep into someone who's been so influential. In fact, a lot of people don't know this either, that Marian Anderson, who sang at the Lincoln Memorial, the reason we know of her today is because of Roland Hayes. A lot of people know Marian Anderson, but they don't know about Roland Hayes. But we know of her today because of him. She gives him credit for that. She says that was my hero. And so I like to share that story too, because he's just a hidden figure, you know, and I felt that's why we do documentaries, because we feel like it's worthy to be shared.
And you won documentary too, right?
Yeah, so those 3 discs, that is my documentary. I call it an audio documentary. It's a fascinating piece. I was able to go online and get a lot of ambiance and background sounds to help create it. So if you were listening to it with your eyes closed, you can see the pictures. Like he's outside, and he's like, it was dark, but I was walking through the fields, and you hear the crickets and things like that. I did what I could afford, you know. So since I couldn't afford to actually have a video and everything like that, I said, well, I'm just going to create this idea. It's kind of like a book on tape, you know. So yeah,
Have you ever done? Have you done, or are you planning to do any audio books? Because I think your voice.
Yeah, thank you. There has been a lot of inquiries about that. People are like, you should do that for your book, and well, because I'm also working on a children's book as well. So I'm like, let me get the children's book out first, and then I'll come back and revisit that. I'm not going to say yes. I'm just going to say I'll revisit.
Can you talk about your children's book?
Oh, the children's book is on Roland Hayes. Yes. So I'm not going to talk about it too much because a publishing company just contacted me.
Okay.
And I decided to go with the publishing company because I've been self-publishing up until this point. Since they reached out to me, we were able to negotiate some things, and I'm going to go ahead and let them do it. But I'm only going to share that I'm working on it. It's going to be out soon. I can't say when because, you know, when you're dealing with the publishing company, they decide when, you know. Right. But what's fascinating about this book is it's actually a collection series. There's 4 books in one. I was going to do one book, then the second book, and I said, no, let's just put it into one book and call it a collection series. And then I'll put out volume 2. And I'm rewriting the story to say that he was 12 years old when this happened. So it's a true story, but yet it's fiction too, because, it's a 12-year-old. So one example is when Roland Hayes was touring in Europe, when he came back to the United States, he and his wife they were living in Georgia, in the South. They decided to go shoe shopping. So it was a place called Rome, Georgia. And in Rome, Georgia, they actually went to the white section. So the store clerk got upset about it. Roland Hayes and his wife and his daughter were beat up, kicked out, and put in jail. So that is a true story. So what I did is I took that story and I shaped it for this 12-year-old. And so what happens is, like, Roland Hayes it's almost like the Wizard of Oz in a way, because you're going through the neighborhood, and then as you go through the neighborhood, you run into people, and then you all form this relationship, and then you skip along singing. So Roland, little boy Ro, is running through the neighborhood. He sees a young girl. She's sitting outside of a shoe store. She's crying. And he says, what's wrong? What happened? And she tells him, my mommy and daddy, they took him away. They beat him up. And he's basically saying, well, I know the neighborhood very well. I can help you find your parents. But he says, do you know what I do whenever I feel bad? Because this is what the African Americans did to get through their hardships. The spirituals, historical setting for the spirituals, helped them get through their hardships by singing the spirituals. They also had codes too for them. So they had it was like a double entendre, so like you say, steal away, the bending trees and the lightning. They had another way of expressing that in other words, to say the same thing, but to mean something else, right? So little boy Rose says, you know what I do? I sing to help me feel better. And she's like, she's crying. And he goes, I'm going to sing a song. I'm going to teach it to you. And then I'm going to help you find your parents. So he teaches her the song. They're skipping down the road. And then all of a sudden they get to the jailhouse and her parents have been released. And then they're reunited.
That's
So
incredible.
one of the spirituals would be like, didn't my Lord deliver Daniel? And so he's like, didn't my Lord deliver Daniel, deliver Daniel, deliver Daniel. And so he's teaching her this song and they're skipping, didn't my Lord deliver? So it's a beautiful story. It's a beautiful take on the spirituals. You're getting some historical context to it at the same time. So yeah, it's going to be great.
Incredible. I really do.
I'm super excited. So I can't say when it's coming out, but that's what I'm working on, and it'll be out soon.
And I know that our kids really do need to look into the history, because we miss it.
It's a gap out there. There's I looked it up and I said there are no children's stories on Roland Hayes. There's Marian Anderson, Paul Robeson, but I said, you know what, I'm going to fill that gap.
Yeah. Any other projects that you have in your pocket?
Yes. I'm only home to sleep. I don't do anything else, but when I'm home, I sleep. So yes, I actually have, so I'm working on more books and I'm also working on more recordings. One of the reasons I'm working on more recordings is because my fans, they keep asking me, do you have? And I get tired of saying, no, I'm sorry. No, I don't have. No, just get out there and make it happen. I said, okay, God, these people act like they like me. So let me go ahead and record. So that's how I got my first album out, my Christmas album out. And then, of course, the documentary project. So I am working on 2 more recording projects. It's a jazz CD as well as a hymns CD, because I'm related to someone famous. And her name is Shirley Caesar, if you've heard of her. She's a famous gospel singer. And I remember once, it was about 3 years ago, she said, do you sing a lot of hymns? And I said, yeah. And she said, you should do a hymns project. Now, she's famous and she's a gospel singer. And when she says so, then you're like, oh, okay. So I came home and I decided to go through my repertoire and my books. And I said, let me find some hymns. So I'm excited now. I'm arranging these wonderful hymns. And I'm going to be collaborating with her, hopefully, fingers crossed, and some other friends and musicians. And it's going to be a great project. So the hymns project, as well as a jazz project, because I am a ballroom singer, and so I'm singing at a lot of private engagements. And what I want to do is I want to be able to sing my own material, my own arrangements. And that comes in handy, especially around the holidays for Christmas. With me having my Christmas album out, I'm able to sing my own arrangements. So yeah, so I have those two musical projects. Once the children's book comes out, and then another book. I have two other children's books that I'm going to be working on too. So I think I've got at least 5 more years, and then I can just say, okay, let me stop. you know. But yeah, I'm constantly working on new projects.
Something tells me that you're not going to stop, and that is a good thing. That is a good. Please don't stop.
Thank you.
And then you also have your students. How do your students find you?
Yeah, so I've been fortunate with my whole career, word of mouth. A lot of my students come through word of mouth. A lot of my singing engagements come through word of mouth. But I am available online. There's a couple of companies that, in fact, I hope I'm okay to say this, but Taylor Robinson, he was on the Shark Tank. Now, I haven't owned or watched television in 25 years, so I didn't know who he was, but he called me because he won some money, and, you know, they were able to sponsor his business. And basically, he helps music teachers get students. And he called me, he goes, you may have heard of me. And I'm like, I don't know who you are, but I'm listening. And he goes, I won. I have a business. I have a lot of students who signed up, but I don't have any teachers. So I was like, well, I'm kind of full right now. And then he called me like 6 months later, just checking in. And I was like, okay, I'll take 1 or 2 students. So some of my students come from his organization. The others come from takelessons.com, which is a wonderful, they handle all of the billing and everything like that. I can just be me and just teach and share. And I'm excited because I've been teaching for a while, professionally since 2014. So it's been a good 10 years. And over time, you develop your own methods. And that's a joy to have your own methods because you've got the experience. And I believe that most teachers should be that way. They should have their own methods. I want to be known as that person for this. So I specialize in interpretations. So that's what you'll come to me for the singing, yeah, and speaking.
And what is the percentage of the students who are coming to you for interpretation, music interpretation versus public speaking?
Okay, so music is different because, especially with the competitive American Idol or America's Got Talent, X Factor, those, a lot of, and I also have a lot of pageant queens too that I work with. So they come to me, and the thing, that's why I wanted to put out the book, because I get a lot of last minute students, and they're like, I have this thing to do in 2 weeks and all that. So I feel like what's really going to help you win is learning how to express yourself, is to interpret the music. We can skip past, having a beautiful voice, whatever, but what's going to reach that audience, you've got to interpret the music. You've got to be able to communicate to them. So it's not about the beauty of the voice. And I feel like that's the problem with a lot of music teachers. They focus on the beauty of the voice all the time. But when you travel the world, that is not true. That is not true.
So it's funny that you're saying that, because you're saying that it's not about the beauty of the voice, just the same as when it comes to the public speaking, you're saying it's not about your content,
Mm-hmm.
it's not about your information,
Mm-hmm.
it's about how you deliver.
How you deliver.
Yeah.
Yes. So in my book, I believe it's page 24, I created this chart. So I look at it this way. You have what you are, okay? If you're going to do a performance review on your job, they said, we're going to talk about you. Performance is what you do, okay? Now, there's a performer and then there's an entertainer. There's a difference, because performer, it's all about you. Entertainment is about them. And that's how you interpret. You have to entertain them. One of the quotes from one of my favorite movies, and I actually added that quote to my book as well, is from the Gladiator movie. And there was a scene where he was in his master's home and he was looking around and he saw that his master was once a gladiator. Now, a gladiator is the only way you can be free is through death. You don't get out. You have to die, and then that's how you graduate. And he goes, wait a minute. You were once a gladiator? How did you win your freedom? So his master walks over to the window and he says, If you want to win your freedom, you must first win the people. And I thought about that and I said, that is so true. You have to give the people what they're used to. So like if I say I'm a singer, and they say, sing something for us. I'm not going to sing an original piece. I'm going to sing something that's familiar. You got to win them, win the people, and then you're free to do your own thing. Yeah, you got to win people. Give them something that's familiar to win them. Entertain them. It's about them. It's not about you at this point. And then you're free to be who you want to be. So there is what you are, and then there's how it's done. So we have performers, what you are, and then how it's done is the entertainer. Or we have someone who has a passion. Okay, that's what you have is a passion. But what you need in order for it to get done is discipline.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely correct.
You have talent, and you will not recover from talent. You need skill. So I fashioned that to like in business. You have policy and then you have practice. When things fall apart in the workplace, how do you recover? Because you have a policy in place. If you don't have a policy, if no one knows a policy, what's going to happen? Well, I was told to do this. And someone says, well, we've always done it this way. It's like a folktale. Okay, well, everyone is just, but there's no policy in place. So things are going to be all over the place. But if you have a policy in place, you can recover. It says, this is what you do. Policy is like a skill, technical skill. You can recover when you say, okay, take a deep breath because skill says to do this. But your talent will just like, I'm just going to sing. I'm just going to talk again. No, focus on your skill so that you can recover. So those are the secrets. That's the first part that I like to break down as an intro. This is what we're going for. You come in here with this, but you're going to leave with this.
Right. And then like again, bringing it back to comparing or not even comparing, sort of like syncing it together, public speaking, singing, communicating another language, right? Or even singing and music, right? So it's always about audience. It's always about what the message that you're delivering and making sure that it's always about them. It's not about you.
We are here to serve.
Right.
Whether you like it or not, you're going to have to serve someone in order to make the world go around. We've got to serve them. It's got to be about someone else. You got to love your neighbor. You got to do for your neighbor. You got to invest in the future by, looking out for your neighbor. When I'm teaching Spanish, the thing that I'm hardest on with my students is expression. You cannot learn. No one came into this world learning any language without an expression. Told you in the beginning that was the first thing. They're using their 5 senses, and they're looking at how you open your mouth, how you do your head. And this is how kids pick up on all of that. And they start sounding like you because they're using their senses to do so. So for example, they're learning directions in Spanish: up, down, left, right. So it's arriba, abajo, izquierda, derecha. So you're learning these vocabulary words, you're learning these phrases, and you're going to do this: arriba, abajo, izquierda, derecha. And I say, no. And they go, I got it right. And I'm like, no, you didn't. You did not come into this world learning up, down, left, right like this. So if I'm going to teach you a language, you've got to get involved, or else you're going to forget. You're not going to remember. You didn't come in learning English that way. When you were a child and you were learning English, and we go up, down, left, we were using our body parts. We were using the physical part, and we were using our tones. So you're learning Spanish. You need to do that. If you don't do it, you're wrong, because that's not how we learn language. Language communicates. And if you don't get it right the first time, you're not going to be able to communicate. You must use your body and say, arriba, abajo. You see how the picture changes? Abajo, izquierda, derecha. You must do that. If you don't, you're wrong. I'm really hard on them about that. You've got to communicate. You're not just here to learn the language. You're here to communicate that language. And no matter what country, where you're from, what languages you speak, that's how you learn it. Am I right? Did you learn up, down, left, right like this?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. And that's what it means to, work with humans.
Yeah.
Because there are so many conversations right now. Oh, AI is going to take over interpretation. AI is going to take over,
No.
facilitating discussions here and there. It will in some areas, but humans are irreplaceable, in my opinion.
And you're absolutely right. And because again, what reaches us is that thing that the expressions. AI can't do that. It can fake it. I'm happy to be here today, but we know that's not real. See, someone can fake it to you and be like, hi,
Well, you see,
you know?
when we see it even between
Yes.
each other, when we are like, okay, you know what, I need a little bit more energy, come on,
Mhm.
smile.
Yes,
When
it
we
makes
see
a
each other,
difference.
right?
Yeah, it's really huge.
So, when you work with somebody and helping the person to work on the communication techniques and be efficient with the communication, what do you recommend first?
Well, you're learning the seven
Seven.
interpretations. Maybe I should break those down. It's called wide pad, and two of the letters actually have two words. So W is word painting. You got to paint the picture. Okay, so we'll use a phrase, the cat jumped high. So you got to paint that picture. So you would say, the cat jumped high. So if you, as the listener, had your eyes closed, you can actually see that picture painted. The cat jumped high because I did something with the word high. I painted that picture. I didn't say the cat jumped high. You're just going to, okay. But if I say the cat jumped high, yeah, that painted the picture. And in inflection, which is the letter I, it does the same thing. So you change the pitch. Inflections have to do with change in pitch. So I did it already. So word painting and inflection can overlap there. So you have the cat jump high. You could do that. Okay, that painted the picture. That inflection made it different.
Mhm.
The D will say diction for that. You were understood. The cat jumped high. The cat jumped high. And now we have E, which is an emotion. Now, a lot of students feel like they know how to give an emotion. And I laugh all the time because I always ask my students, out of the 7, choose an expression. And they always start with E, emotion. And I'm like, I fold my arms and I go, okay, let's go for it. And I say, now, if you're going to use an emotion, you got to choose an emotion. And they always start with happy. So I'm like, okay, so choose a word out of that phrase, the cat jumped high, and you got to be happy. And so they'll say, which word? And they'll go, jumped. And I go, okay, make it happy. And they go, the cat jumped high. And I say, no. And they go, what? And I'm like, you said you were going to be happy. So the thing about an emotion is that it has to start before you even make that sound or you sing that song. You see, it's got to be here first. So you got to go, the cat jumped high. Because you can't go, the cat jumped. And then all of a sudden, now I'm going to be happy. No, you have to be happy first. If you say, I'm going to choose a different emotion and I'm going to choose sorrow, you can't just go, the cat jumped. No, you have to go into that emotion first and then present it. Mm-hmm. That's how you use an emotion. That's how you're going to reach people. You have to be there first. You've seen people get up to give a presentation for singing, and they do this. And then the sound comes out because they go into this emotion. You have to go there first before you present it. You can't just be standing here and then, it's not there. They're going to be like, okay, he just threw that on. That was fake, But when you just take a moment to get into character and then, why? It makes a difference as opposed to just going like this. Why? You can even hear it. So that's the E. The P, I said earlier, that's the punctuation and phrasing. Mm-hmm. The A is a word that I made up. I've taken 2 words and put them together. It's called aspiratory. And it's spelled slightly different because aspiratory is spelled with an A, A-S-P-I-R-A-T-O-R-Y. I spell it A-S-P-I-R-E-T-O-R-Y because I've taken the word aspire and aspirate, put them together. that gives you the Tory. So aspire is the longing for something, right? It just needs to be there. So it's kind of like an emotion. Oh, I long to be there for you. And then the aspirate is the breathiness. Now, a lot of music teachers are against this, but I think it's cool to be able to sing on the breath like that. We even speak that way sometimes, because it really draws people in, Come on, give us a little breathiness to it. So you can actually have the aspirate and aspire, put them together. So we'll take the word I love you, the phrase I love you. And so you say, Mom, I love you. She'll go, thank you. I love you too. But if you say it this way, Mom, I love you. That changes everything. Use aspiratory. And I'll tell my students, I'm like, well, can you try an aspiratory? And I just use that word and they know what to do. They would add some breathiness to it. So if you say, I'm in Silver Spring, Maryland. Okay, can you add some aspiratory to it? I'm in Silver Spring, Maryland. It changed everything. It's quite effective, It's like, all I say is just add an aspiratory, and they do that. And it's just like, oh, and they go, they get excited. Oh my God, And then we have the last D, which is dynamics. And that has to do with the volume. So you can start out soft, get louder, or vice versa.
Thank you so much for summarizing it, because it's usually my job to summarize, but I wouldn't be able to do it better than you do. So thank you again.
My pleasure.
So basically those are really 7 techniques.
Well, there's 2 big techniques that I focus on. So one is the interpretations. The other ones are 2 vowel approaches.
Okay.
The reason I have 2 vowel approaches is because there's one that's the English vowels, and then there's the Romantic vowels. And the Romantic vowels have to do with the Romantic languages, Spanish, Italian, French. And most languages, the A vowel is consistent. It's always ah. No matter how many times you use it, it's ah. The E vowel is consistent. They're pretty much consistent. They're not going to have all these changes. Like in English, we have 5 sounds for the letter A. 5 sounds for the letter E. It's just too many different sounds for that one letter. So I call those the spoken or speaking vowels, because in English, we speak them a certain way. So the Romantic vowels are ah, e, o, u. The English speaking vowels, they have diphthongs. Diphthongs are 2 sounds in one. No, they're 2 syllables in one sound. So A, the letter A, is pronounced A, E. You have 2 sounds there. A. In order to understand this, you got to say it slow. I tell my students, you got to say it slow in order to really get it. So say the letter A, and they go, A. Now you hear it. Now let's go to the letter I, because E doesn't have it. So go to the letter I. I. You hear the ah, and then E. Let's go to the letter O. You have O. You hear the oo and the O. There's 2 sounds. Let's go to the letter U. U. You have the E. Ooh. U. You can only get that when you slow it down.
Yeah.
So yeah, the interpretation, the 7 interpretations, and the 2 vowel approaches are my biggest primary things that I teach.
Incredible. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I want to say thank you, and I want to make sure that we're going to put in the end of the podcast all the information about your book.
Oh, wonderful!
Because I really find it. I've never seen the opportunity to learn from someone who is putting the language, music, and singing into effective communication, particularly public speaking. Because again, some of us who spend so much time in business and doing presentation and some of the CEO talks, we need all of this.
Yes.
It's really so important, but you are doing it in such a unique way.
Thank you. I'd like to think so.
and for some of our listeners, I'm sure that they're also motivated by you and very inspired by our discussion. If they are to take the very first step, what would you recommend?
For which subject?
Start improving.
For speaking?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm like, is it singing or speaking
no,
or?
it's speaking, because it's all about communication. So for some of us who do not sing, just very first step towards the direction of getting better and getting more involved with your theory.
That's a good question. I have to go back to diction, I guess, and say,
Diction. So it's
just make
always
sure that you're,
because I was
yes.
thinking between emotion, because I always think emotion, diction, or vocal.
So for the dynamics, right?
Yeah.
So the reason I say diction is because when it comes to communication, diction, you want to be understood. So if you're learning another language, you need to make sure that you're being understood.
Yeah.
The emotion comes later. That's kind of the comprehension part of it. Now I understand why you say I love you this way. So that comes later. So the biggest thing is going to be diction. Just get the word out there. Make sure they understood you. You said love, amor, or amore. Italian, amore. Spanish, amor. If you don't say amore, if you don't say it, you say amore, they go, okay, I get it. He's saying I love you. He's using the word love in Italian. Now, what comes later is the emotion part. Amore, amore. That comes later. So we don't want to focus on that right away. The first thing you want to focus on is diction. You want to be understood first.
All right, we're going to be learning diction. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
And again, where can we find you?
You can Google Jackson Caesar. I believe I'm the only one. I said that before I had found someone in Africa. And I was just like, wait a minute. But he doesn't have what I have out. So, but yes, you can find me at jacksoncaesar.com. That's one of the first steps there. You can find me there.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. It's a
so
pleasure.
much fun talking to you as always.
Yes, thank you. You too.
And thank you so much for listening to us. Please help us grow our community. Check out our website, and we will see you next time.